Minnesota Vikings at the Seattle Seahawks here.
This is going to be a good one.
All right, let's see what we got. Ball knower. Let's see if you steal mine again.
Sam Darnold versus Seattle pass rush?
That's not it, but that is a good point. This is a good one. So now I'm just excited to learn. Let's hear it.
All right. 4.8% completion rate over expectation when pressured. Sam Darnold has, which is actually fourth best. So he does decently well when pressured. He's got a negative 0.36 EPA per dropback versus pressure, which actually is middle of the pack. It ranks 16th among quarterbacks with a minimum of 100 dropbacks. Minnesota tackles. This is a big part here. They have the sixth best offensive grade this season, but Brian O'Neill was injured in this last game.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Kevin O'Connell came out yesterday and said his knee, Brian O'Neill's knee is sore, but he fully expects him to still be able to play, but he's not going to be at 100%. And this last week in particular, after Brian O'Neill went down, 18th ranked offensive grade is what the Minnesota tackles had. So you go from the sixth best to ranked 18th when Brian O'Neill is taken out of this equation.
What's the meme where it's just, explosion in the background? It's fine.
It's fine.
Everything's fine.
And if you take into account that, this is already a team that was down Christian Darrisaw. They brought in Cam Robinson at the trade deadline. Huge pickup for them because Cam Robinson has been able to kind of fit into this scheme seamlessly. But the tackles are really the strength of this Minnesota O-line because that interior is shaky and again has a lot of room for improvement. So it's really that you rely on those tackles. And as good as Sam Darnold has been against pressure this season under Kevin O'Connell, which is a direct contrast from what he's been like earlier in his career, you look at the Seahawks and they're one of 4 teams to have 5 players with a pressure rate above 10%. They have generated unblocked pressures at the 4th highest rate this season. So again, they kind of do some fun things up front, especially. Mm-hmm. And it's that Mike McDonald defense. And that's going to be a really interesting kind of matchup to see how Sam handles the pressure, if he handle it well. And more importantly, if Brian O'Neill is able to kind of stand up and hang in there, despite the fact that he's not going to be at 100%.
My matchup that matters here is the receivers for the Minnesota Vikings, which include TJ Hockenson. So I'm talking about Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and TJ Hockenson going up against the Seattle coverage unit. When you look at those 3 pass catchers, all 3 of them have receiving grades above 83.0 over the last month. That is a really good streak that these guys are on. And you contrast that with a coverage unit that is really struggling. Seattle over the last month, 52.6 coverage grade as a team. And last week in particular, their 29.6 coverage grade was the lowest single game team coverage grade in Seattle Seahawks history in the PFF era, which goes back to 2006. I believe that stat would go all the way back to 2006. They had 1 forced incompletion last week, and it was in the final 2 minutes of the game. So you're talking about a unit that is humming in the passing game. Yeah. And the other side of the coin is really struggling. So if the Seahawks corners and just coverage unit overall does not improve their floor, Minnesota could blow them out of their own building. I mean, they could run up the score on them. I really do believe that. So they got to step up on that side of things. They've got to be able to slow down those 3 really great receivers that the Minnesota Vikings have. And then on the other side of things, another major weakness for the Seattle Seahawks, my plus factor here, is just the offensive line overall. Seattle Seahawks offensive line, specifically the interior offensive line last week, 38.5 overall grade, 28.9 in pass protection, 46.2 in run blocking, 14 pressures allowed, and 3 sacks. I'm just talking about the 3 interior offensive linemen. I'm not even talking about the entire offensive line as a whole. 4 pressures and 3 sacks allowed just from the interior offensive linemen. The Seahawks went through so many struggles with their right tackle spot when Abe Lucas wasn't out there. Now he is back out there. So him and Charles Crosser, at least you've got your bookend tackles, the guys that you love at the tackle position, but still the offensive line is not as good as it needs to be. Carmen, they're second in the NFL in most pressures given up this year to only the New England Patriots, and they're not even that far behind. We talk about the Patriots offensive line like it's not even an NFL offensive line. They've given up 197 pressures this season. The Seahawks have given up 190. They're only 7 pressures behind them.
Ouch.
So just to, I'm not trying to pile on the Seahawks, but how they have played in coverage and how they have blocked on the interior of their offensive line are not just like, yeah, I mean, they got to be better. I mean, these are back-breaking types of floors that you have for these units that will cost you football games. And you're going up against a really good team in the Minnesota Vikings, and you mentioned sort of the diversity of how they like to get after the pocket. The interior offensive line just not good as of late. Who's your plus factor?
It goes along with what you were talking about in your matchup that matters, and it is Jordan Addison. And for all right, so the Seahawks play man coverage about 19.6% of the time, which means they're most of the time they're in zone. They're more evenly split than most, but they're in zone quite a bit. Sam Darnold has faced zone coverage at the third highest rate this season. And to bring this all back to Jordan Addison, when targeting Jordan Addison in zone coverage, Darnold has thrown 5 touchdowns, which is tied for the third most, and generated plus a positive 36.9 expected points added, which is the fourth most among quarterback and wide receiver duos. That's from Next Gen Stats. That's something that I feel like is something to absolutely take advantage of, because yes, there's a lot of attention paid to Justin Jefferson, rightfully so. And the way that Kevin O'Connell uses his kind of layering concepts and the way that he kind of schemes his receivers, he is able to get Justin Jefferson open to some of the easiest targets, which is absolutely insane given that everybody knows that Justin Jefferson is one of the best receivers in the league. But all of that attention paid to Justin Jefferson then stretches you thin elsewhere, which is what you were talking about with Jordan Addison. And when you talk about team tendencies and the fact that the Seahawks play a lot of zone, and that Sam Darnold has been able to find Jordan Addison in zone quite a bit and be so productive, like scoring with Jordan Addison. And it's a lot of this is these catch and runs, these long explosive plays to Jordan Addison, where he's really good at finding the soft spot in the zone, and Sam Darnold's really good at recognizing it, and they're just on the same page in that way. So it's another thing too where Jordan Addison is like really good at contested catches too, which is like so anti what you would think, given how that he's not like that big of a guy. He's like 5'10", like 180 something. Like he's not a big dude, but he's really good at those guys coming down with those contested catches too. So Sam Darnold trusts him implicitly. I think that he's kind of the key to unlocking the full potential of an offense that has so many different weapons, like you were talking about, TJ Hawkinson. You even talk about Aaron Jones in the backfield, coming out of the backfield, all of that kind of stuff. This is and Kevin O'Connell is one of the most creative play callers, one of the most intelligent play callers, I think, when you're talking on the offensive side of the ball. And that's going to be a tough task for this Seattle defense.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure you like and subscribe the video. And if you don't have a PFF Plus subscription, you can get one to see all the premium stats that we talked about here on the show, plus the expert betting and fantasy advice over at subscribe.pff.com. The description is also right below. So if you are not a PFF Plus subscriber, you can become one today.